Howdy. Greg Swann here. I am so exuberant that I'm going to sing. I don't think I've ever sung at church. I know occasionally I let a little bit of singing slide by. It's not something that I do, something that I plan to do sometime, not necessarily at church, but learning how to play the guitar has been an ordeal, a long-lasting ordeal. I'm not that good at it now, I'm sure you've noticed, but learning how to sing while playing the guitar would be the next challenge. But I'm going to sing for you this morning, and so if you want to cover your ears, you can, whether you need to from bad singing or because you're afraid to be infected. But here's the song. It goes like this. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah. It's the refrain from the Easter Alleluia by Marty Haugen. I'm an atheist. I really admire religious music, and I particularly admire Marty Haugen as a composer. He's a very good composer. You can ignore the doctrinal content and just listen to the musicianship that goes into his creations, particularly if you listen to other liturgical music and how terrible it is. Marty Haugen is a genius, and that particular song is utterly amazing. The content of the song is all about Easter, and so if you're not a Christian, it's not going to mean anything to you. But again, if you just listen to the music, or if you listen to it played instrumentally, if you search for it, Easter Alleluia, spelled the Catholic way with an A, search for that on YouTube, and you'll find piano and guitar instrumental version that's just beautiful, and that goes through all the counter melody parts too, which is another thing you get with a real composer is multiple parts for many musicians. That when you only have a few musicians, you can take them over and take them back. The piano can take back anything. But anyway, I sing that song. I sing that song every Sunday. I sing that song before I start to warm up my voice. But I think it's important anyway. I mean, it's like a chant, or I forget what they call it, what the Buddhists call it, or whatever, the things that they say when they're meditating. That particular song, I mean, if you just heard, you heard everything there is to it. Hallelujah, hallelujah. That's it. That's it. It's hallelujah twice, and then the same thing repeated 2 times. That's the refrain. That's the whole song, or that whole part of the song. If you want the rest of the song, you can learn it on your own. But just that part of it is such an incredible, emphatic prayer. I mean, it's great for my voice, but it's also great for my attitude. It's one of the things that makes me as unbad as I might be at doing this. I don't want to insist that I'm good. I don't know. I think I'm good, but I always think I'm good. I really think I'm good today, and that's why I'm singing. I wrote a book yesterday. How many of you can say that? How many people ever in the history of humanity can say that? It's not a very long book. It probably ended up being around 12,500 words by the time I'm done, which is, you know, 1/10 of an airport book, if you want to measure it just in terms of word count. But it's a whole new world of books, and I really love it that airport books are 120,000 words because the publisher wants to convince you that you're buying value. They want to convince you that you're getting a good value for your money, that's the argument of the buffet or the all-you-can-eat or the free seconds or the unlimited free soda, or all that is taking away your fear that you're not going to get the value that you're paying for. And that's what they do with airport books. They're not only too long, they're also printed in very large typefaces on high bulk paper to make them look big and fat, real big fat books. If you go into an airport bookstore and look at The Fountainhead, which is a very long book, I think it's about, I don't know, I think it's about 150,000 words, maybe longer than that, and then side by side with it will be Atlas Shrugged, which I think is like 350,000 words, maybe more than, and double the length of The Fountainhead in any case, maybe more than that. But if you pick up the books and compare the spines, they'll be virtually identical. They'll be virtually identical in terms of their physical girth, because The Fountainhead will have been printed in bigger type on higher bulk paper to make it look like a comparable value, to make it look like a better value. And if you're shopping just in terms of bang for the buck with paperbacks, then both of those books are going to look like better values than anything else that's there because they're both longer. Well, if you're really starving and you really feel like you could eat 7 pieces of chicken, then maybe you're wise to go to the buffet. But if you can moderate your appetites and maybe not even have the chicken at all, have something else, then the extra value is only valuable if you actually realize the benefit. I don't know why I'm talking about that. I'm talking about a book, and the book I wrote is 12,500 words long, approximately. That's approximately where I'll end up. It's not where I am now. But all of this gets bigger in revisions, alas. I'm not trying to bulk up the book. I'm desperate to keep it short, and the reason for that is because in the age of the internet, a book doesn't have to be long to deliver value. It has to be valuable to deliver value, and this is the way I like to write, because I don't like to write chaff. I don't like to write stuff just to fill up pages or just to fill in details or just to satisfy idle curiosity. If you go and read novels that were written in the days when novels were serialized in newspapers, you'll be amazed at the chaff that you'll read a book that's 600,000 words long that really could have been cut to 60,000 words without losing anything. Anyway, I wrote a book yesterday, and I am very delighted. And I'm delighted for very high D reasons. This is the essence, the ultimate essence of high D joy is right here. I got something big done. I did something big, and I got it done. Done, 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 done. I am a D, and so I literally could not be happier. I am jumping out of my skin. I'm distracted. I don't even have any notes today. I didn't make any notes because I couldn't. I've been making notes about what I'm going to be doing to shore up the arguments in this book, but I'm committed to be talking about Loki's loving malice, and I will, but I didn't make any notes because I don't need any. I've got all of this in my head. And so let's just start someplace and see where we get, and when I run out of things to say, I'm going to stop. I promise you that I will not go on for very long because I'm exhausted and I need to get back to work, and I'm not paid in anyway. So, but here's something that came up. This is a friend of mine, young friend of mine that I met because of Anthony Johnson at the 21 convention. And I am so lucky that Anthony approached me 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when I wrote Man Alive. Anthony approached me, God bless him, or I wouldn't know him. But he approached me out of interest for my ideas and has been enormously supportive in the face of a lot of hostility, because I kind of do ring on hostility. I'm an introvert, I'm a D, I'm a lone wolf, I'm abrasive. I say things that nobody wants to hear anyway, and I say them in a way that really, really rubs people the wrong way. I do know it. You got to know who you are. And I can't really write a book about empathy, which is what I wrote about yesterday, without having a real good, clear empathy for myself. And I do. I know who I am. I know what I do to people. I know I drive people crazy. I wish it weren't so. I do what I can to mitigate it, to ameliorate it. And yet, I am who I am, and I intend to be who I am. I'm not going to not be who I am for your sake or to appease your tender feelings or something like that. And even that way, even in saying it that way, I'm kind of abrasive and aggressive about it. And I don't mean to be. I really don't mean to be. I just want to do my own shit. That's all. I just want to do my deal. I want you to do your deal. And to the extent that we can get along and cooperate, I'm in love. And to the extent that we can't, it's a big world. Go do your own thing. I'm going to do mine either way. I grow regardless. I love that. This is, if I ever have an inscription put on a door again, that's what it's going to be. I grow regardless. I would love it if you would grow with me, but if you won't, that's your business. I can't control it, and I'm not going to wheedle at you too much either. Do what you want to do. I'm gonna. That's what I'm going to do. But anyway, I have this friend who made a remark on Twitter about shrieking girls, which I thought was funny, because shrieking girls are, shrieking is what girls do. How do you know it's a girl? She shrieks. And I don't really love the behavior, and I know he doesn't either. I knew what his objection was, but I was kind of going the other way because I wanted him to think about it the other way. And what I wanted him to think about is an idea that I call the empathy of the opposite. Empathy for the opposite is a better way to say it. The empathy for the opposite is to try to cultivate an awareness of someone whose circumstance in that context is most opposite your own. And so the obvious empathy for the opposite that most people would be involved in would be empathy for the opposite sex, which is exactly what he was talking about. He wondered why the girl shrieked. Why did the girl shriek? To emphasize her sex difference. It was a sex display. This was a mammalian sex display, her demonstrating to him that she was a girl and not a boy, because girls shriek and boys growl. That's the difference. If he wanted to get her attention as a man, he would do something very rough, very manly. He would not just come up from behind, but he would put his hands on her hips in a really quick and commanding way. Not quite seizing her body, but right next to it, making her feel it. Seizing her body in pantomime. This is play. Both of these things are play, and they're sex role play, and because they're sex role play, they involve sex displays, and the sex displays that each partner will choose will typically be displays that are most opposite the kind of displays that are put on by the opposite. And why is that so? Because no one trades corn for corn. The thing that attracts me to my wife is everything she has that I don't have. The world is full of ugly, bearded guys. Some of them I like. Most of them I don't like. Sexually attracted to none of them. I will elaborate on this strategy by talking about my wife. I've completely forgotten to play the guitar. How exuberant am I? How lucky are you? Anyway, I will elaborate on this strategy like this, that my wife is an introvert, and she's INTP. And I would say she's a very high S. She tests in DISC, she tests as a chameleon, in other words, about equally everything DISC. My argument would be that everything she does for S reasons. And my ultimate complete argument that she is a high S and really nothing else is the fact that we have 8 cats. Maybe 7 cats right now. I don't even know. I don't count them. She knows. I don't count them because I'm not a C. I don't really care because I'm a D. She really does care because she's an S, and everything she says about being a chameleon is all her being a D or a C or very rarely an I for S purposes. That she wants to love, she wants to be loved, but she really wants to express her love for the things that she loves. This is the way that she experiences love, is by sharing it with the things that she loves. Lucky me, I'm one of them. I don't ever want to figure out if I'm first. I'm first when it matters to me, and that's all I really care about because I'm a D. But because Kathleen is so rarely I, even though she wants to say that she tests chameleon, she really is so rarely I. She never actively seeks to draw attention to herself. The question you would ask, you know, here's a young, skinny, very pretty girl. I have a picture of her when she was 15, and I swear she is jailbait Barbie. Just looking at her can get you in prison. But she was very shy, very thin, flat-chested, which is not helpful. And she was surrounded by the shrieking girls, by the woo girls, by the cheerleaders and the pompettes, and really the top of the ziggurat at every high school is who? It's the head cheerleader. I mean, it may be somebody else, but it's somebody in that exact same role with basically that same exact kind of behavioral profile. If you can imagine what makes the head cheerleader, then you can imagine the girl who's in that role, whatever actual specific job title she might have, she's nevertheless is the head cheerleader. And below her in the pecking order is a ethological taxonomy of clingers and hangers-on and climbers and wannabes, and moving up, moving down with bullet, and all the way down at the bottom are the untouchables, are the omegas, the girls who always come in last. That in the competition for dominance in this group, the queen bee, the head cheerleader, always comes in first. And the omega always comes in last, and every other position in that pecking order is up for grabs. And the girls are all grabbing for them. And I'm not criticizing girls here, because the same thing is happening with the boys, and the same thing is happening with every social milieu. If you have more than 2 people in a group, chances are there's a pecking order like this. There's a top, there's a bottom, and there's a middle. And if the group is larger than 3, then the middle is fighting for second place, fighting for not last place. But Kathy, in that hierarchy, if she were to compete in that hierarchy, she would have been the omega or somewhere near. Not really the omega, because the omega girl would have been fat and short and pimply and poor and badly groomed, I guess is the way to say it. This is who is the omega, the untouchable everywhere. But Kathy would have been very near the untouchable end of the taxonomy. And, you know, somehow or another, not consciously, not through conscious thought, but through some process of working it out, she realized that her best competitive strategy was to go quiet, go silent, to be beautifully groomed. She's a beautiful woman anyway. You've seen photographs of her, you've seen her in person or whatever. My wife is unbelievably stunning, and I do not deserve to have a wife that pretty. I do not. I do not deserve to have a wife that nice, and I do not deserve to have a wife that loving, and the only reason that I have all three is that she is that loving, that she tolerates me now and tolerated me in all the time it took me to get here. But I love her no end, and she loves me, and the thing I love about her, the thing that I loved about her from the very beginning is that unstated quality, that unstated excellence, that she was excellent. She was truly beautiful and beautifully appointed and stunning to 9 decimal places, this while she was in high school and later in the business world. Absolutely perfectly appointed, everything, every hair in place. And totally silent about it. No shrieking, no woo girl, no look at me, none of that attention-seeking behavior that we associate with the head cheerleader. How do you stand out to a guy like me? You've got to be unordinary. If you are unordinary, I am already not paying attention because I already understand ordinary. I understand ordinary inside out. I'm not interested. How do you get my attention? I hope I'm not her second choice husband. I'm her second good husband. Her first good husband was a guy a lot like me in terms of his ability to discern quality, but he was very much more S than I am. And, I think Kathy deserves someone more S than me. I try very hard to be more S for her. A whole lot of what I know about S virtues, I know because I have to cultivate them in order to love my wife. But that is the anti-strategy of the shrieking girl, is the silent girl. From a distance, and if you can't hear anything, they may look fairly identical because they will both be perfectly appointed, but one will be shrieking to get attention, and one will be anti-shrieking to get attention. And this is where I am today, is in a place where I have a monkey's fist grip on human motivation, period. Human motivation in the middle of the bell curve, which is what I'm always interested in, but also human motivation at the extremes. I understand the outliers better than the full-time professional students of the outliers understand them. I have, I think, evolved, developed, discovered, explicated a brand new theory of empathy, a brand new theory of motivation, a brand new way of understanding every bit of this. And I learned it all from a turtle. We saw, you might have seen it too on Facebook a few weeks ago, there was a wonderful video. Turtle playing with a dog. And the turtle was fast, and the turtle could really move, and the turtle could really play. They were playing with a soccer ball or something like that. Dog would play the ball, turtle would play the ball. They were playing, you know, kind of monkey in the middle, keep away, really a game, exactly the way the dogs would play with the ball, only now the dog was playing with the turtle. And you could see that the turtle was getting more and more and more exercised by the game, to the point that it eventually bit the dog on the leg. And if you have ever been bit by a decent-sized turtle, it could be that your nickname is Stumpy, because when a turtle bites you, a dog, I mean, if you've been bit by a dog, you know what it's like to be bit, but you have no idea what it's like to be bit until you've been bit by a turtle. A turtle can literally snap your finger right off. A big enough turtle could take your hand off. Just like that. I mean, just exactly like if it had been hit by an axe. The torque in that jaw is utterly amazing. This thing bites fish in half. But you watched it. You thought it was charming. You thought it was fun. You maybe shared it with somebody. Maybe you watched it more than once. It was cool. It was really cool to see a turtle play. And I watched it. And I said, why would a reptile play? I mean, you got to live where I live. I've been aware of play all my life. I am Loki. I'm not Loki himself, but Loki is in me everywhere. Loki is in every cell in my body. I play. That's what I do. My exuberance is everything to me. And if it's right now, it's at its peak. I mean, I know I'm glowing with it. I can feel it. I feel it from the inside. This is empathy for myself. I can feel my interior mental state in all of the physical processes of my body. And you can do this too. I mean, everybody does this. This is how you know how it is that you feel, is that your feeling is not just mental, it's also physical. Why would a turtle do that? Why would a reptile do that? Why would a mammal do it? I mean, I know why a mammal does it. You think dogs play to have fun? Mammals play and cuddle. That's what they do. Mammals play and cuddle. In the mating season, they mate. When they mate, they play and cuddle. But why do mammals play? It's martial practice. They play at play fighting in order to learn how to fight. What is it that they're learning when they learn how to fight? I mean, obviously, you know, pure exercise, usus est magister optimus practice, you know, practice, motor muscle practice, just simply the practice of doing it, learning maybe weapons and tactics. There is going to be a learning process here. This is complex behavior. It's not something that's going to be important to the animal, and the play is utterly necessary for learning that. So, you know, exercising the muscles, gaining motor muscle control, weapons and tactics, these are all things that are being learned in this process. It's obviously fun, and that's the motivation for doing it. But there's one more thing that's going on there, and what that is the mammal, when he's play fighting, is actively working to predict what you're going to do next so that he'll know how to counter it. I introduce you to empathy. This is what empathy really is in a mammal, is attempting to predict what you're going to do so it knows what to do in response. And what it really wants to do is to play or to cuddle, or ideally both. And so it's trying to figure out how best to play and cuddle with you all the time. That's what mammals are doing. That's what your dog is always doing. He's either sleeping or looking at you, trying to figure out how to play and cuddle better with you. And he likes you best when you're playing and cuddling with him. That's when your dog loves you best. Your dog loves you infinitely all the time, way more than you love him. Way more than you will ever love anyone or anything. Your dog loves you. And the way he loves you best is when you play and when you cuddle. That's empathy for the mammal, is trying to figure out how better to integrate into the pack, how better to integrate into the family. That's really what empathy is for an unthinking, unreasoning mammal. Well, let's go back to that turtle. So the mammal is playing really in order to get martial experience, martial practice, and the most important piece of that martial practice is that empathy, that ability from born of experience, of long experience, repeated events. Because remember, this is the only way animals can acquire new information, is by pattern matching. It's not by conceptual reasoning. They cannot do it. They cannot do it. Stop saying that they can. Put it out of your mind. It's not there. They lack the capacity to engage in conceptual reasoning, and so they can only learn by repetition, by repeated impression of the same basic facts. And what an animal is learning and playing is how his opponents might fight back, how to predict which way they're going to go next in order to be there before they get there. That's empathy. That's what it's really for. And it's important to understand it in that context, because the whole idea of empathy being self-sacrificial is hugely wrong, but the idea of empathy being terribly social is kind of wrong. It is social in the case of mammals, because they're engaged in social behavior in pursuit of a sociable response. That's what a mammalian initiation of action would be an act of friendliness, or at least an act of wariness aimed at friendliness. Mammals are always looking to make their family bigger. by mating if possible, by adoption otherwise. They're always looking to grow their world, to grow their social world. But that's a secondary consequence for the empathy. The purpose of the empathy is so that I will know what I will do next. The thing outside my mind that I'm thinking about is there, and if I predict it accurately, then my response will be appropriate. If I predict it inaccurately, my response will be inappropriate. But that thing outside my mind is really of secondary importance, because all I am doing is taking account of the facts that are available to me in order to determine my own future course of action. And that's what empathy is, and that's all it is. That all of those other secondary consequences that psychology and neurobiology, neuroscience, etc., all the things that they want to study, they are all fundamentally irrelevant secondary consequences, and I'll show you why. Why does the turtle play? Why does a reptile play? Why would a reptile ever play? Reptiles are solitary. They don't live in social groups like mammals. They do not cuddle. They don't cuddle. So why would they play? For exactly the same reason. For self-defense. It is self-defense practice. I mean, I don't know that juvenile reptiles routinely play at martial pursuits, but when you see an organism playing, what you are seeing is play at martial pursuits. And damned if the turtle didn't prove it. There's no such thing as slap boxing. Slap boxing always turns into a fight, and the same is true if it's a dog and a turtle playing together. The turtle got exercised. He saw red. His internal emotional responses, physically felt internal emotional responses, were oscillating more and more and more out of control. He was getting angry. He was becoming enraged, like Bruce Banner. He was turning from mild-mannered, slow-talking, slow-walking, slow-witted tortoise into the Incredible Hulk. And he bit the dog. And he didn't nip the dog. It wasn't a friendly little nip. He bit the dog like a turtle. And the dog was quick enough that he only took a little bit of turtle beak. But had the turtle had a better grip, that dog's nickname would be Stumpy. And the turtle is not social at all. But the turtle has enemies. A reptile has enemies, and therefore a reptile has empathy in order to predict how his enemies will act, so that the reptile in his turn can respond appropriately. Empathy is predicting what another entity will do in order to know how to respond to it. For a reptile, empathy is all about risk management. For a mammal, empathy is all about socialization. The scientists love to measure the mammal component of empathy, and so they see what looks to them like self-sacrifice, like altruism. They do not see the love. The motive behind a mammal's empathy is love. I need to make sure that the people I love are not suffering. I need to make sure that my love is unsoiled, unbesmirched, unrent, untorn, unbroken. And so when I expend my effort to repair my love or to do some benefit for someone that I love, this is not a sacrifice. I am aggrandizing myself. I am making myself larger. I am making myself better and more noble in my own eyes by taking care of my own values. Empathy is a value-seeking strategy because it's an egoistic strategy. It's an inherently egoistic strategy. The actor is the beneficiary of the act, and this is true of all human action. So to say that that's true of empathy is completely redundant, in my opinion. One of the reasons that I know that science has been all wrong about this is because all human action is self-motivated. Every action is taken by the self, upon the self, for the benefit of the self. And benefit in that sense means benefit in the self's own opinion, not in yours. But every act is an act of preference. You're preferring the world that has been made better by the improvement that you envision deploying, putting into place. And the beneficiary of every such improvement is the actor. So I promised you Loki's loving malice, and now you can see how it's built, that empathy is understanding the interior processes of the entity that I'm considering, and I'm being very vague intentionally. When you read the book that I'm talking about, 9 Empathies, you'll see why. We're talking about 3 different kinds of empathies, only 3 of which really, but only one type of which concern real objects, and the rest concern things of varying degrees of unreality. But the action that is taken consequent upon the empathetic understanding can be loving or malicious. And the empathy is necessary in both cases. The empathy of Loki is the empathy that knows what will sting you. Not necessarily sting you ultimately, we'll get to that, sting you to the quick, sting you to the marrow, but what will sting you? How can I, if I want to play a Loki joke on you, it is similar to snapping you with a towel. It's a father tongue, more complicated, more notation system based kind of teasing, but it's very similar to snapping you with a towel in the sense that I intend to inflict a very small injury on you as a way of saying, I'm thinking about you, really. I'm aware of you. I'm having some fun with you. You're my buddy. You're my pal. You're my friend. I love you even. You can be saying that way. I mean, I don't snap my wife with towels, but often I will introduce her to how cold my hands are so she can understand how cold my hands can get when I'm doing things that I don't insist that she do, like dealing with ice. But after I've dealt with ice, I often will show her how cold my hands are in the most intimate and refreshing of possible ways. And this is very much Loki's humor. It's knowing that she's gonna shriek. I mean, my wife will not shriek when she's competing with the head cheerleader, but I can make her shriek with really cold hands, and that's fun for me. And the fact that I can make her shriek when I know that she really doesn't want to, that it's not in her nature, that it's not a part of her behavioral strategy, and yet I can do it anyway, that's fun for me too. That's Loki kind of fun. That's an exuberant man's fun. But Loki's malice is really made of the same kind of empathy. I know someone so well that I know what I can say that will hurt him awfully. And typically hurt him the worst. The worst that I think I could say to that person is the thing that I'm going to say, because my objective is to injure that person. This is true malice, and it's not. There's nothing noble about this. There is never a circumstance where a malicious response is justified except in immediate self-defense of life or property, and then it typically won't be a verbal defense, but a malicious response is always self-destructive to the actor, because you have to self-induce the ugliness necessary to try to damage someone in that way. And to damage another person is a horribly malicious act. It doesn't matter if you do it with a bullet or a knife or a cruel word. The cruel word really can be worse, because shoot you dead, you're dead. I knife you, the wound will heal. But if I say something to you that you can never get out of your head, I'm in your head forever. I say that all the time. I'm in your head forever. I don't mean to be in your head maliciously. I don't want to hurt you. But I know I say things that stick with you because that's what I intend to do. That's everything that I intend to do. This is what I am doing. This is why I am so exuberant today. Because yesterday I put a book together. I wrote a book. Friday morning I started making little notes. I ended up with 9 different kind of empathies that I understood in 3 different categories. And literally 12 lines of notes. That's it. 12 lines of notes, ultimately, maybe, I don't know, 36 words. That's the notes. This is all the notes that went into this book. And then it just poured out of me. I wrote it yesterday, and it poured out of me because I've been living this from the inside out for years. But my friend the turtle helped me understand that empathy had to precede the mammal brain, that it cannot be something that originates in the mammal brain. And this is, of course, one of the sources of the errors that science makes, is the presumption that the only empathy that exists is stuff that looks like mammal brain empathy, and therefore when they see empathy that is exactly inverted from that, in other words, when they see empathy that is not charitable and or beneficial from their point of view, nothing is charitable in this way, it's always self-seeking, empathy is always self-seeking, but they see the imposition or the incursion of a loss on the part of the person acting from the empathy, and they think that means self-sacrifice, when in fact it just means another way of expressing self-love. It's trading one currency of self-love for another currency of self-love that is entirely self-adoration. To the extent that anyone behaves in any sort of admirable way, you are seeing the expression of self-adoration whether or not the person knows those words. One of the things I like about people is people who say things like self-respect, or I got to look at myself in the mirror, how am I going to sleep tonight? I like people like that. But once I saw that turtle plane, I drew away the idea that empathy originates in the mammal brain. This is recently, you understand that. But then the other recent event that has affected me has been my involvement with this completely pathetic Stefan Molyneux cult. And empathy for the monster is what the chapter is called, chapter 8 in this book. And it's not about Molyneux, it's about where monsters come from, where this notion of the monster, that again, you find this all the way through psychological and neurochemical, neuroscientific literature, this idea of the human monster who has no empathy. If you're familiar with my ideas on how human consciousness goes into existence, one of the corollaries that you should be able to draw without my having pointed it out explicitly is that there cannot be any such thing as a human being with no empathy. That the process of coming to be a human being, as opposed to a genetic Homo sapiens with almost everything in common with mammals and almost nothing in common with human beings until the point that the child graduates into human conceptual abstract thinking, into free will, into informed discretion, into the interior conceptual monologue that continues thereafter for every moment that you're awake, into thinking and conversing in concepts and learning in concepts. All of those things happen on the order of age 5, from 4 to 6. And until that happens, the thing that is living in your house is not really truly a human being. It's a nascent human being. It's becoming a human being, but it's really just technically a mammalian-like genetic Homo sapiens that will someday be a human being because you're cultivating it properly. But that process of cultivation requires empathy on your part and empathy on the child's part. One of the most important things that you are teaching your child when you are cultivating that child's mind, when you are teaching that child to reason, think, reason, and communicate in concepts, when you are doing that, you're doing it by empathy, your empathy and the child's empathy, and there is absolutely no way to achieve that graduation into father-tongue, into human conceptual consciousness, without fully intact empathy. And the fact is, we know that it's implausible to say that any adult human being could be without empathy, because no adult mammal can be without empathy, no adult reptile can be without empathy. And so that proposition is incorrect also. We have, I think, undermined everything that scientists have had to say about empathy so far. There may be people who are saying something similar to me out there, but the mainstream opinion is all sociopaths have no empathy, and the purpose of empathy is self-sacrifice. This is all silly. It's really silly. But Loki's malice and Loki's love are almost identical. The only difference is the intended consequence. That Loki's love intends to express love, and Loki's malice is a very malicious use of empathy, of the complete understanding or the partial understanding of the emotional state and contents of another person's mind in order to figure out what will be most injurious to that person, what will be most outrageous, what will be most cutting, most stinging, most hurtful. But you can't do it without empathy. To say that the bully, the sociopath, the narcissist, the malignant narcissist, the psychopath, to say that these monsters are anything other than the product of imagination is incorrect. They are human beings, badly damaged, badly behaved human beings, but they are human beings, and they are human in every respect. They have empathy like unto you. They've just turned it backwards, and in the book I will explain how it got turned backwards. But the empathy is exactly the same, and the objective is exactly the same, and the beneficiary is exactly the same. It's always the self. It's always the personality. All of these, from bullies on, everybody who tries to dominate reality by dominating other people is tragically damaged. Their lives are terrible, really terrible, far worse than you can ever imagine, and you should certainly not feel any need to take any vengeance upon these people. except in the immediate defense of life or property, because their lives are terrible, their lives are miserable, their lives are horrible. They live in constant fear of everyone else, and that's why they're always trying to dominate everyone else. But the basis of their domination is exactly the basis of your love, the same thing, that empathetic understanding of what other people are going to do. And the difference between someone who loves like a happy mammal and someone who fights like a quarrelsome reptile, the difference is what you do about the empathy, not the empathy itself. The empathy is the same in both cases. Probably Tuesday, I'll be done. And that's just the way I work. I'll work from Friday to Tuesday, and that's it. I'll walk away. If I have more to say, it'll be 6 months from now, maybe in another book. I don't work like high seas. High seas work like reptiles as far as I'm concerned. I can actually do that, too. I can take this mammalian and reptilian empathy and use it to explain the DISC system. I'll do that, too. I'll do that in this book when I make it available. A high C would work on something like this for 10 years and then would be afraid, forevermore afraid that he omitted something or gotten something wrong or even just had a typo. Okay. I'm a high D. Friday to Tuesday, and if I'm done by Tuesday, I'm delighted, because all I want to be is done. All I want is to have the work done. And I'm delighted to be able to share it with you, because I'm going to teach you a way of seeing not just people but animals, future events, subjunctive experiences with the people you love, and hugely abstract ideas like empathy for the idea itself. I will take you through all of that. And at the end of that process, at least one of us will be delighted. My name is Greg Swann. This is the Church of Splendor. I don't go to your church, but I'm glad you come to mine. Bless you. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next week.